super excited to have this next guest back on the show. One of my all-time favorite fighters, and I think many of you would agree. Legend, Pride champion, former UFC top contender, and one of the best guys in the sport, UFC Hall of Fame member. There's so much more to say, but we don't even have time to list everything that this man's accomplished. So happy to have the man they call Hendo, Dan Henderson, back with us. Welcome to the show, Dan.
Thank you, guys. I appreciate it.
My pleasure. So much to talk to you about, man. I really appreciate you coming on. A lot of interesting things going on. UFC is about ready to go back to a live audience in Florida. I'm really excited about that. I think that's great. What do you think? Is that something that worries you, or do you think it's a good thing that they're doing over in Florida?
I'm surprised it took so long to do.
Yep, I agree.
I haven't been worried about COVID myself, but I don't know. I've got a different mentality than most.
Yeah, I agree. Let me ask my producer, Doc, can you turn down the volume a little bit for me through Dan? I appreciate it. Yeah, so it's going to be great. Some amazing fights going on. And so one of the things I wanted to talk to you about was, it seems like over the last couple years, the going to different divisions has been a big thing. You were, if not the first, one of the first people to have 2 belts in a major organization. I think you may have been the first, with being the Pride middleweight and light heavyweight champion. And you know, since then we see Conor McGregor, we see Daniel Cormier, we see Amanda Nunes. It's very hard to do, but a lot of fighters are wanting to do it. And I think for years the UFC didn't really want that, and now they're, you know, kind of open to it. In the UFC, you competed in both light heavyweight and middleweight, or was it only middleweight? I think it was both, but primarily middleweight. Is that right?
I don't know how many of which weight class. I was primarily light heavy, and then I started out at middleweight and then went up to light heavy, and or vice versa. I think, I don't know. I don't know which I had more of, but I was at both quite a bit.
Absolutely. So what did you think of Israel Adesanya going up and fighting against Jan Blachowicz? Before I get your answer on that, I was going to say that I thought what was unusual about that was that he didn't even have a single light heavyweight fight in the UFC. Like, Jon Jones is making sure he's putting on some size, and he's taking several months, possibly it may even be a year, before he takes his first heavyweight fight. Izzy, I think it's just like off the cuff, said, yeah, let's do this. He came in at 200.5 pounds in a fight that was a 206 limit. He probably was 15 or 20 pounds lighter than his opponent there, who was the champion. And I thought he gave it a hell of a shot, but it just, the size difference, I think, really mattered. What did you think of Israel and his camp deciding so quickly, let's just go up and do this? We don't care about putting on any weight. We don't care about ever getting any other fight in light heavyweight. Let's just go fight the champion right now. Did you admire that? Did you think Izzy had a chance? What did you think of his performance?
I thought he had a pretty good performance. And honestly, he's probably about the same size I always was, and didn't have a problem with it, and never thought twice about fighting at light heavy or middleweight. I weighed in primarily most of the time right around 200 pounds, 202 maybe, for my fights at light heavy. So, and that was just what I weighed. I think my last fight against DC, I weighed in at 199. Right,
I think I remember that.
So, I don't know. I just, I like that about guys that aren't worried about cutting weight to be able to compete. Be comfortable and confident in yourself and your skills at whatever weight class you weigh. You should be able to beat guys a little bit bigger than you, or I've always said that, it doesn't matter necessarily so much about the size or strength of somebody. If they don't know where to put it, it doesn't really matter.
Yeah, very, very true. And I think Blachowicz is a tough guy. I just recently heard Blachowicz say if they want to pay him, he'll fight. He'll go up to heavyweight to fight against Ngannou. I don't know if anyone's going to pay him to do that because pay for a homicide there, which is probably what it would look like. But what did you think of Stipe versus Ngannou? I'd really like your opinion because you know a hell of a lot more than me from being there and doing it. Although I've been a martial artist all my life and I've watched and trained, but this was my thought, and I'm curious to hear your opinion. When I saw that Stipe was going to be lighter than he had been for the previous fight against Ngannou by 12 pounds, I know he had been lighter for DC. But DC's not as big a guy as Francis. When I heard that Stipe was going to come in at 233, and Ngannou had already been practicing and training with Kamaru Usman and learning to sprawl and really practicing his takedown defense, I just didn't feel like that was maybe the best thing. Correct me if I'm wrong, but if you want to have a better chance to take someone down, it probably helps if you have some more size on you than being smaller. But let me just kind of bundle that all into the final question. So Stipe comes in light. He shoots once and Francis shuts him down, and then it looks like literally they just said, we're not going to shoot anymore, and what are we going to do here? Let's just try to see what happens. Or I don't know. I respect Stipe. He's an amazing fighter. But what happened in that fight? Can you tell me from the game plan of the guy with the better wrestling, Stipe? Did he just lose a step in his last fight? He's getting close to 40. I don't know. Or what happened to make that fight go that way? And did it surprise you?
Yeah. I mean, I don't think anybody was surprised that Francis was able to knock anybody out.
Yeah.
That's always a good chance of happening in every one of his fights. But I thought Stipe. I don't know exactly what the game plan would be, but I think it should have been to really set up your takedowns and get Francis coming at you a little more. And I know that Francis kind of went out there and was a little bit more methodical and didn't rush him too much. I think he was worried about getting taken down, but I don't. Stipe had one takedown attempt, and Ngannou did a great job with his defense. But I think Stipe definitely could have went back and still tried to be taking him down. One or two times on top, I think he would have really wore Francis out. And a big, strong guy like that has a lot of power, it definitely diminishes if you're a little tired. So I think that should have been a little bit more what Stipe should have been going after the takedowns a little bit better. But it's easier said than done sometimes.
Yeah, understood. One sequence that I'd like your opinion on, that final sequence where they exchanged and Stipe kind of tagged Francis, and it looked to me like right then would have been the perfect time to shoot again. And instead, it looks like Stipe kind of said, man, I think I might have tagged that big guy. Let me just throw some hands here. Why? I mean, wouldn't the shot have been the better thing at that point?
Either backing away and recovering a little better, because he just got done taking a pretty good shot, and then I think because he did land a pretty good shot on Francis, he thought he had him hurt. He went after him and just walked right into a punch. So yeah, either backing out or changing levels and trying to take down would have been. Both of those would have been a lot better than what he did.
Yeah. Sometimes it's so hard to know, and I guess in a situation like that, you literally have like a split second to decide what to do. And I think Stipe is a great champion and a great fighter, and is kind of pretty much known as a guy with a high fight IQ. Do you remember any situations in your career, because you were also a guy with a very high fight IQ, were there any situations that you feel the decision you made at one split second was the absolutely wrong decision? And if so, which fight was that?
I'm sure I could think of a few of those, but you know, it when you get somebody hurt and you feel like you connect and you know you want to rush in as fast as you can to maybe finish him, you know, that's when you kind of let your guard down a little bit and come in a little quick. And I've been tagged a number of times like that. You know, same exact way, but not in the same manner that Stipe was. But you know, I know that there's been a couple different things that I can't pick any one fight out specifically, but you know where I made a definitely a bad mistake. You know, I'm sure there was one or two when I fought Vitor in Brazil. You know, I know that I made my second fight with Shogun. Did the same thing, hurt him, rushed in and got tagged, and ended up trying to barely make it through the first round. So it definitely changes things when you feel like you hurt somebody.
Absolutely, and no one is perfect. Fighters will make mistakes during some point in each fight, but is that something that you think separates the really good fighters from the just average fighters, making less mistakes? Like, you know, have you noticed that a lot of the fighters that were good but that you beat were because they made mistakes that were kind of almost like a gift to you?
Yeah, I don't know if I'd say gift, but yeah, it's always better to make less mistakes, and if you don't make any mistakes, it's really hard to get beat. And you know, granted, if you don't make any mistakes, and neither does your opponent, it's all about who has better skills, who had the better game plan, and who implemented their game plan a little bit better. So, yeah, I mean that's always tough to say, but wrestling's the same way. If nobody can score on you, it's hard to lose.
Yeah, that makes sense. You know what comes to mind is that great Fedor fight that you had and that you won in, what was that, in Strikeforce, I think?
Yep.
So let me ask you this. What could Fedor have done when you started to come up off the bottom? And I don't know, I'm not the most knowledgeable wrestling guy. I don't know, it was some kind of a whizzer or something where you caught him and just started to reverse position. What could he have done different to have not ended up with you on his back smashing him with punches?
Yeah, it's just basically sitting back, put his weight back on his hips a little better, and I wouldn't have been able to get out as easy. And once I did get out, he just posted right onto his hands instead of just you know, he was so off balance to begin with. It made it a lot easier for me to get out. And he was wide open for that little shot up the armpit there. So yeah, I mean, he needed to defend that a little bit before I got to the position. So
Gotcha.
By not letting me up quite so easy.
Was the wrestling background key in that? Had he been a wrestler like yourself, do you think he might have made that decision and been successful in stopping you by doing what you're saying?
Oh, absolutely. Yeah, for sure. I mean, a wrestler will be able to feel that weight a little bit just naturally, and kind of hold you down a little bit better. You know, a lot of my toughest fights in my career have been against wrestlers, so
yeah,
that don't want to strike with me. So that makes it tougher to strike with a guy or try to finish somebody when all they want to do is take you down.
Absolutely, absolutely. Speaking about a wrestler striking, we've got an interesting fight coming up in about a week and a half. Just a boxing match between Ben Askren and Jake Paul, the social media influencer. He and his brother, you might have heard of, are do a little bit of boxing. They're not that great at it, but they've trained with Mayweather and other stuff. First of all, I think it's really interesting that when Jake Paul picks a member of the MMA community, he picks a guy who's past his prime and who really never was a very good striker. I have all respect for Ben Askren, but some people called him one of the worst strikers in the history of the UFC top 10. But it's interesting that they pick Ben Askren of all people, but now I'm thinking that some people are believing in Ben. I know you know Ben Askren, and I
really don't know him very well at all. I may have met him once or twice, but his wrestling time was, much after mine.
Right,
so
right.
I wasn't involved in wrestling so much during that time, and no, he's not the best, or hasn't shown the best striking in any of his MMA fights. So yeah, I mean, I think that's definitely a tough fight for him, but maybe he's definitely a great athlete, and maybe the fact that he's not allowed to use any of his wrestling to fall back on, he's actually going to learn how to strike a little bit better, and maybe he's going to come in prepared for this one to actually strike. He's definitely a good athlete, so we'll see what happens, I guess.
Absolutely. It'll be interesting. I think the one thing that people are not thinking about is the fact that to be an MMA fighter for a dozen years, man, you got to have gone through a lot of fire and hard training, and then also to be a top wrestler. So Ben Askren obviously is a rugged individual. He's a tough guy. He's, in other words, if someone on the street decided to walk over and punk him and hit him in the face, he's probably not going to react by falling on the ground unconscious. He's a strong guy. He's a physically strong person. Do you think that ruggedness of him being an elite level athlete in wrestling and being a high level MMA fighter for so many years will maybe help him to deal with some of the boxing skills of a guy who's just 23 or 4 years old and who pretty much is a social influencer who's been training boxing only for 2-3 years?
Well, I think that just the background in wrestling and the amount of accomplishments that he's had and the amount of time that he's been training, he knows how to train hard. He knows what it is to be tough, and like I said, he's a really good athlete. So yeah, that gives him a chance right there, and it's making him focus just on striking. So we'll see. At least he doesn't have to worry about any flying knees coming at him.
Yes, exactly. That definitely will be a benefit to him. So speaking about different divisions, Jon Jones is finally going up to heavyweight. It's taking a while here, and now all this talk between him and Dana about the money, and he's going to step aside, and then he was asking to be released. Obviously, the UFC is not going to release Jon Jones, I really wouldn't think. But anyway, now apparently they're in talks, but also Derek Lewis is in talks. Can Jon Jones, and I know you know him well, can Jon Jones, if he's put on 20 or 30 pounds of muscle, can he go in there and compete and be successful in the heavyweight division? That's my first question. And then the second question is, can he do anything against Francis Ngannou?
Yeah, I honestly, and I don't know if he could put on 20 or 30 pounds of muscle, the legal way.
Right, that's true. Yeah.
That's tough to do. But I honestly think Ngannou would be an easier fight for him than Stipe would be.
Mm-hmm.
Just because of the wrestling background that Stipe has, and he moves a little bit quicker and can defend those takedowns, and he definitely has power as well to knock Jones out. But yeah, Ngannou has that power, and he looked pretty good as far as defending the one takedown Stipe tried. But Jon Jones typically comes in with a really good game plan, sticks to it really well, and executes most of the time. So I think Ngannou would be a better fight for Jon than Stipe would be.
Gotcha. Now, I was talking to a friend who was a wrestler, actually someone I trained jiu-jitsu with, and I was talking about wrestlers toward the end of their MMA career, and I asked him, I said, why do some of these wrestlers toward the end of their career seem to be only willing to stand. They're not going to shoot in even against an inferior opponent. And I asked my friend, I said, is it because they just figure that they want to have fun standing in the pocket? And he said, do you think if a really good wrestler felt like it would be really easy for him to take his opponent down, who was a much better striker in an MMA fight, that they wouldn't do it just because they want to have fun? And I said, I mean, probably not. If they're young, maybe, but he said if they're older, they wouldn't. He said what it is he said you get a wrestler who realizes that he doesn't have that speed anymore. He doesn't have the ability to come in and get those takedowns and be quick and get in deep, and he just can't do it. That's why he's not doing it, because he can't do it. And he said, now, Father Time catches up with everyone. But he said eventually everyone in every sport gets to the point where they can't do what they did. But he said wrestling is a skill that if you're losing your reflexes, and you're losing your reflexes little by little every year, then eventually you're not going to be able to do what you did 10 or 20 years before. Can Jon Jones, who hasn't been wrestling much at all for several years, do you think does he still have it? Or the fact that he's not old, the fact that he's only 33, 34, you would think, I guess, he probably still has his reflexes. But what do you think of the fact that if someone's not using their wrestling much for several years, although they're good at it, can they just turn it back on? And does the age really have a lot to do with it?
I honestly don't agree with whoever it is that told you that, but
okay.
You know, I as a wrestler, I mean, I was older too, and the primary reason why I preferred to strike was that was the easiest way for me to finish a fight.
Right.
You know, especially with you know how good these guys are at defending submissions, and that wasn't my expertise. I'm pretty good at them, but my best chance of finishing a fight is with striking.
You had the striking, though. You had the striking skill, admittedly.
And you watch Randy in his fights, and you know he was good with his striking, but he didn't hesitate to take people down when he needed to, and was still capable of it at an old age. You know, I get in there and spar occasionally with some of the guys, and because I'm a little bit out of shape and a little slower and older, I take them down all the time now in practice, where I didn't used to do that. You know, because it's a little easier for me for my win to be on top instead of, you know, scrambling around all the time.
Right.
So,
sure.
Yeah, I think Jon Jones is right in that same boat. He hasn't needed his wrestling other than to maybe defend takedowns here and there, but you know, and when he has needed it, he's used it, and he's done a good job, you know, with takedowns. You know, he took down DC the first time they fought a couple times. So, yeah, I think his wrestling's going to be there when he needs it, and it's all about when you get a hold of somebody. It's not about speed at that point. It's you know, it's about technique and,
right.
and striking more about speed, and as you get older and you get a little slower, it's harder to land as many punches, but takedowns are pretty easy, and especially if you get a hold of somebody.
Yeah, kind of like Khabib always showed, if you're always in the right position, you're going to get the takedowns, right?
Right. And he was a guy that was relentless about it, you know.
Yeah.
You could definitely use a lot less energy than he did taking guys down, but yeah, he was just relentless with them.
Absolutely. Now, what do you think about the fact that Francis showed one sprawl? He defended one takedown. I know so many of us wish we could have seen if he had the ability to stop 2 takedowns or 3 or 5. That would have given us a better idea. I know that having Kamaru Usman in there has got to be amazingly helpful, and I know some people that have trained over at Extreme Couture. Obviously, you know Randy, but people that have been there watching Francis, and he is just training hard on the wrestling. He knows that that's, you know, that was his Achilles heel. Can Kamaru Usman, grabbing a guy in his mid-30s who grew up in Africa and in France, not in the collegiate wrestling system, can Francis really become a guy at this age who has really good takedown defense? I think that's the question a lot of people have, is that would he have shut down 2 or 3 or more takedowns that Stipe would have thrown? Is Francis now going to be a guy who is going to be able to shut down every wrestler he fights, or would you feel that's very unlikely? Or how good do you think he can do with Kamaru Usman there?
Honestly, I mean, it's hard to say. We only got to see one takedown defense, and he did the right things. He defended that almost perfectly, and I think had we seen Stipe try a couple more takedowns, he there's a good chance that Stipe would have got him and made some adjustments, and wrestling takes a long time to learn compared to other things, in MMA. Wrestling is one of the toughest things to really get good at, but if you're not focused on every part of wrestling, only takedown defense, you definitely get better at it, quite a bit better. So, and that showed in him, and I think, being at a gym like Randy's, I mean, you need a little bit bigger guys than Usman trying to take you down, but just having the technique and having access to all that technique is definitely a good thing.
Absolutely. Let me read a couple of comments from some of your fans watching. One of them feels that your spinning back fist against Vanderlei was your greatest moment. Is that up there, would you say, in your opinion?
I don't know about that. I think the part when I knocked him out was even better.
Yeah.
It was definitely something that I didn't expect to do, didn't plan on doing. I just kind of got to be kind of out of position, and he had a good angle on me, and I decided to throw a spinning back fist. It wasn't anything that I did that often in practice, but occasionally.
Absolutely. I remember after that fight, because I was watching all those fights on pay-per-view, and I think I remember Vanderlei mentioning, because he was known for cutting a lot of people up. That Axe Murderer nickname wasn't just for nothing. He would just cut a lot of people up. And I remember, I think after that first fight with you, he said you had skin like a snake, like he couldn't cut you up no matter what he did, that your skin was so thick. Had you ever heard of that before, or did you ever realize or think of yourself as someone that was good at being able to resist being cut?
In my fighting career in MMA, I did have a few cuts, but not very many. I got cut open more in wrestling than I did in fighting. Mm-hmm. You clash heads a little bit more in wrestling than you do in MMA. But yeah, it was definitely a good thing to have, tougher skin for sure.
Yeah.
So yeah, that was definitely a plus.
Without a doubt. And I think that's something that as time goes by with scar tissue, it becomes more difficult. Did you ever find yourself having a problem with scar tissue as the years went by, or was that something that was anything you were even really aware of, or not really?
I mean, I'm sure I have some scar tissue here and there, but like I said, in wrestling, I was split open a few times with my bigger scar on my cheek and a bunch under my chin, all from wrestling, and I'm sure it built up a little bit of scar tissue, but I didn't have any issues with the same spot opening up over and over again in my MMA career at all. So,
gotcha. Interesting question. We had one of your arch nemesis on the show last year. Late last year, I think it was, Michael Bisping. I remember that the Ultimate Fighter season was really something, man. That trash talk he was putting out there was insane, and everyone was so happy when you got by your revenge by absolutely smashing him. That also obviously probably had been a highlight. Did that squash the beef as far as you were concerned after that? And did you have any okay feelings about Michael Bisping, or did you pretty much dislike the guy before, during, and after that fight?
Yeah, I don't know how well I I liked him to begin with, but dislikes a strong word. He's not a guy that I'd want to hang out with or prefer to hang out with just because of how he is. But I didn't have too big of a problem with him other than just how he was on the show. He wasn't somebody I wanted to be around, and he definitely had a loud mouth that I was definitely going to try to shut. So,
yep.
I think it only shut it for a month or two, and he was back at it again.
Yeah.
But
yeah, that is true. I believe
for a long time.
Say that again. I'm sorry, I talked over you.
It's hard to shut guys up like that permanently.
That is true. Although it does seem like as years went by and he got older, he became mature, and it seems like he kind of stopped playing the heel. And it's kind of ironic that for the last like 5 or 6 years, people like him. He's no longer fighting, but it seems like, all of a sudden people started saying, wow, this guy's not talking as much trash. He's a veteran. He's been in there. He knows what it's like. He's a tough guy. And that eye, man, he was kind enough to take his eye out on my show. I didn't even ask him to do it. But he said, you're a great interviewer and you're a good guy. And he said, we're talking about his eye and his health, and he took it right out. If he was fighting for several years with a fake eye, because I remember a guy told me 10 years ago that I trained jiu-jitsu with, that he didn't say what it was, but he said, man, from what I'm hearing, that guy can't see very well out of one eye. That would definitely make him a pretty tough guy if that was true, wouldn't you think?
I'm sure it definitely is a little tougher to see some of the strikes coming at different angles. I've wrestled against blind guys before, and as long as they got a hold of you, they know kind of what to do. But it definitely changes your perspective on them a little bit without an eye. But I'm not sure how long he had it like that or not. So
definitely interesting. Well, so are you looking forward to watching the UFC fights this Saturday? I know you don't watch every weekend, but are you looking at this one, or what are you looking forward to, if any?
Yeah, one of my guys is fighting this weekend, so Sam Alvey's fighting.
That's right. He's a great guy. Sam is an amazing guy. We've had him on the show, and he's fighting another guy we've had on the show, and that's always tough, Julian Marquez. But Sam is going back down to middleweight after a little bit of a stay at light heavyweight. That's what I was going to ask you. What do you think of the position there that he's back at middleweight? And also, how important do you think it would be that we finally implement a 195-pound division in the sport?
I don't know. Like I said, I've never been too keen on cutting weight or guys cutting weight in MMA, and I think it's probably better for Sam to be at 185, although he's definitely heavier than I ever was. But I think 185 for where he's at in the sport, and he's got power. Especially at 185, a lot of those guys don't have the power he has, and he's definitely a little bit quicker when he stays lighter. And he's learning, and he's still getting better. And technically, every year, every fight, he works on different things and getting better. But I do like him better at 185.
Yeah, makes sense. He's got such a great attitude, and that seems to be real. Like, whenever I've corresponded with him, he's always super friendly and super polite. So that's not an act. Like, I know once in a while you have someone that has this great image. A lot of people in Hollywood, I've heard, and then when you meet them in person, they pretty much tell you to go F yourself. But I think that Sam Alvey is really this image of the smiling, happy, friendly guy, isn't he?
No, he definitely is the guy that you see. You see what you get with him, and he's a refreshing guy to have around the gym, and just always has a great attitude. He's in there to work hard every day, and kind of inspires the younger guys to do the same.
Absolutely. That's good to hear. 2 minutes left with you, Dan. I just realized that when I was talking about the fighters in the one different belts, and I didn't give you much of a chance to respond, or else I'm sure you would have mentioned this. I don't know how I excluded Randy Couture. Who had 2 belts first, you or Randy?
Well, I think Randy did, but he didn't have them at the same time. I think that's the difference.
That's right.
That saying, simultaneously having them, 2 different weight class belts. But yeah, I mean, I think I did that for about 10 years before Connor had finally done it. I was along the years I'd seen a couple chances in the UFC. I think BJ Penn had a chance to get 2 belts, and just I was rooting for him. Was always a big fan of his, and he just didn't get the job done. Came in a little bit out of shape, and that I think there's only been a couple different times where someone's even had the opportunity in the UFC to have that. So.
Right. And then GSP came back and got it from Bisping, but he was no longer the welterweight champ. But yeah, an amazing athlete. So final question here. This Saturday, it was supposed to be Marvin Vettori against Darren Till, replaced by Kevin Holland. What do you think? How does that fight unfold? What are some of the key factors there? Who do you think takes that?
I don't know. I know. I just don't know. It's hard to say on those guys. I haven't. Honestly, there's too many damn fighters out there now to track every one of them. I know I've seen them fight, but putting the exact time frame on and visualizing their actual fight that they had is a little tough.
Understood.
And I didn't go back to look at any videos and stuff, but
right.
Yeah, I mean, I'm hoping it's a good fight. I'm definitely tuning in to watch Sam fight, so I'm sure I'll watch that one as well.
Absolutely. Then let me ask you, Kamaru Usman, Jorge Masvidal. Masvidal says he's not going to be given such short notice here. He's not going to have to lose 20 pounds in a week. That equals to him beating Kamaru Usman. Do you agree?
I'm going to have to disagree with that one. Usman's just a beast, and he's got a great style. He's a good wrestler, and he uses that to his advantage pretty well. So, and he's got power, and I think he's a tough fight for anybody.
Absolutely, he is amazing. Just seeing him and maybe Covington run it back would possibly be the most exciting, right?
I'd like to see that one. For sure.
Absolutely. Well, Dan, I want to thank you so much for taking the time to jump on here. It means so much to me to have someone like yourself. As I mentioned, I've been a fan of yours from the beginning. I remember you fighting Carlos Newton, and I was impressed back then, and just the way you always conducted yourself and handled yourself. And, I want to thank you so much for taking the time to come here and talk to us again on the MMA Power Hour. We really appreciate it.
No problem at all. I appreciate it. So thank you for having me, and have a good rest of the show.
Thank you for watching the Hannibal TV. Please like this video if you enjoyed it, and click the subscribe button to not miss any of our latest shoot interviews, match videos, or news updates. Support us on patreon.com for $1.99 a month to watch our full shoot interviews ad-free and help our channel grow. Follow us on Twitter at the Hannibal TV for instant updates.